welcome to Daily Talk, Researcher 135's Community Call with your host, Rich Vernadeau. Tonight, I'm looking forward to a repeat guest. He's been on the show many, many times. He's calling back in tonight, and we're going to be discussing the dire state of affairs that exists in the world right now with Kim Jong-un and the North Korean country rattling his saber, doing nuclear missile tests, and threatening the United States. And I'm sure all of you are keeping up with it. Things are very tense at this moment. In many ways, we hover very, very, very close to the outbreak of World War III, depending upon just how far this dictator in North Korea will go. We have, of course, as president now, Donald Trump, and he is prepared for whatever threat North Korea poses. And I want to welcome Dan Patrick to the show in Tampa, Florida. Good evening, Dan.
Good evening, Rich. It's been a while. Good to be back.
It's been welcome back. I look forward to having you many, many more times. So, Dan, tell me what your assessment is of the situation now with North Korea.
Well, you know, I read up. I was reading more up on it. Actually, a lot of events have happened in the last couple of days.
Yes.
There was a failed missile test.
Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And the United States has set up the THAAD missile defense system in South Korea, and we have, I think, a nuclear sub and a warship right off the coast of the peninsula. And Donald Trump has been talking to the leaders of Japan, China, and South Korea, because any kind of conflict in the area is going to seriously impact those three countries the most. But I think we're at one of the most serious junctures of nuclear nuclear catastrophe since the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Absolutely.
That John F. Kennedy had to face, and that's going on over 50 years, close to 60 years, and it's a very serious issue. It's almost like the United States can allow him. He's 33 years old. Kim Jong-un, Jun-Nong, or whatever his name is. He's 33 years old. Donald Trump made a good statement the other day. He said, he took over the regime at 27 because that had to be hard. He's giving him the benefit of the doubt of being immature and not very savvy in world politics. But at the same time, North Korea is a very strange, isolated country with a lot of customs, unusual customs and behaviors. And it kind of reminds me in a lot of ways of the Egyptian kings. Like when one would die, it didn't matter how old the son was that was going to take over. They have history. I think they have recorded kings from the Egyptian days of 12 and 14 years old, simply because he was the heir, next in line.
Yeah, one of the classic examples is Tutankhamun, of course, the boy king.
Exactly. And this kind of reminds like this Kim Jong-un, he wasn't ready. He's not ready. He wasn't ready. He's recently had I believe he's had his uncle killed, or his half-brother killed. His uncle was thrown to dogs and bitten to pieces. I understand he doesn't trust anybody, even in his family. So there's no reason for me to think that he trusts anybody on the world theater.
Dan Patrick, I'd like to take a moment to welcome Northeast Texas to the call. Good evening, Northeast Texas.
How are you?
Doing great. And how are you this evening?
All right. Just watching it storm.
Fantastic. We're glad to have you here. Weigh in anytime you want to. Dan, this is a good friend of mine, Debbie, and she's on the show tonight to pitch in her opinion and ask a comment or a question. We are discussing the world situation with North Korea, and, with that dictator over there rattling his saber, and how Trump will deal with it. So, Dan, go ahead and tell us more about what you've discovered in the past few days.
Well, yeah. Well, the United States is trying to come to a diplomatic resolution, and Trump has opened the door for that. But on the other end, the dictator over there, the young man, he's not really balanced, stable, or mentally stable, and they don't feel that he has the ability to negotiate and in the kind of way that other leaders, more mature leaders, do. And what Donald Trump has made a statement that there's the possibility of very, very severe military conflict in the region. And this causes a lot of problems for everybody. And this includes China, South Korea, Japan especially. The Russians and China have made a statement that military actions by the United States would be unacceptable, but at the same time, they're very nervous too. And they haven't said what they would do if we did do it. They just said it was unacceptable. And I honestly believe that the leader of China is probably leaning towards the United States being the bad guy in this situation, going in and taking him out in a military action. And I don't think there's any other. I don't think, because of his instability, I really don't think America has any other choice other than take him. The second he gets intercontinental ballistic missile capability, it's going to be totally catastrophic for the world, because he's not wanting to use it for defensive purposes. He's wanting to use it to hold the world hostage. And there's he wants to be aggressive with nuclear capabilities. He's not, like the United States, Russia, other countries that have nuclear capability basically are using it as a deterrent against other countries from using the bomb. And I don't.
And Dan, as I'm sure you recall just a few days ago, he even said he'd like to have preemptive strike capabilities against American cities, and he named several of them off: New York and Chicago, etc. And one of our own generals, was on TV saying very emphatically, look, it's one thing to threaten us at this level. It's yet another thing when he ups the ante and threatens us at a greater level.
Yeah, and the thing is, right now, no one really knows. They know that the missile tests have been failing. I think there's been 3 failed tests that we've documented, through our surveillance and that sort of thing. And they do know he has limited nuclear warhead capability. He could easily probably drop something on China or South Korea. He's just not somebody that has. He's not somebody that the world could possibly let have nuclear capability with long striking missiles. He can't be trusted. He can't be negotiated with. He's not right in the mind. He's too young. Like I said earlier, Donald Trump made a statement that it must have been hard for him to take over his father's regime at 27. He's only 33 now. You can't negotiate with a madman. And I don't think he even understands the implications of what he has. I think that's where he's at. I don't think he's intelligent enough to understand what he's threatening the world with. And somebody like that can't be reasoned with, and we just simply have to take him out. And I think the United States, if they go in, they've got to go all in. You know what I mean? They just can't lob a couple mother of all bombs, Moabs over a couple of strategic places. They've just got to completely burn that country to the ground, and that will ensure stability in the region. And there's just we have too many allies in the area, too much at stake for the world, and I think it'll teach some other people, like let's say in Iran, a lesson too, because they need to be taught a lesson. And I think that we can hold him up as a lesson to the rest of the world that might be considering, getting the kind of nuclear capability he has too as well. I think it has several purposes for the United States to go in military-wise, go all in and go all out and just take him out. It just can't let him have those toys.
Well, do you think, Dan, that most of the European countries understand and will side with us in this particular conflict?
Well, what's interesting about that, Rich, is that Europe is not. I was reading today that Europe is not really in strike. A lot of countries in Europe aren't in striking distance of anything he's capable of putting together. Like the United Kingdom has come out and said, well, the United States are our military allies, but we don't have a lot of fear from his even if he were to get long-range intercontinental ballistic missiles, we don't have a lot of fear for that. The rest of Europe doesn't. He's mostly got ranges for South Korea, China, Japan. Japan, of course, is a major ally of the United States. So then we have, I think, a major military base. I'm not sure. I think we still have major military bases over there, presence over there. South Korea, we still have major military bases present there. They think that he could maybe possibly reach Guam, where we have I'm not sure, you might correct me. This was Guam, maybe a United States territory, if I'm not mistaken. So in that light, he could possibly hit the United States with a missile. I don't know though if he could hit New York, but he could probably hit the West Coast or Hawaii or one of the territories out there in the Pacific Ocean. So it's
that he possibly could strike one of that big battleship that's over there now. Do you think there's any possibility of that? I think that's something that's been discussed, the possibility of him doing that maybe.
Well, he's threatened to do a preemptive strike, like you said, against the battleship that's out there now. We have a nuclear-powered sub out there now. If he does that, of course, if he pulls that trigger, the United States will go all in, and there's no doubt about it. We can't let him blow up a battleship full of United States sailors or soldiers or Marines and get away with it. You just can't do it. And he's got to be taught a lesson. I think he needs to be taken out personally, completely. It's a strange country with a lot of intrigue. Like I said earlier, he had his uncle killed a few months ago. He's had other people. He's had his half brother killed. I mean, he's just not stable individual. He's not right in the mind. He's too young. He feels too powerful with nuclear capability, and he's not using it correctly. He doesn't intend to use it correctly.
Yeah, as I recall that incident at an airport where the victim was poisoned, and there were a couple of people, of course, immediately arrested, accused, and then promptly executed, but we knew that he was basically behind it.
Right, and they say he's paranoid, completely paranoid. He doesn't trust anybody or anything around him, and if he feels that way on a personal level, on his own 2 feet as he walks through, his castle or wherever, his domain day to day, how must he feel with the whole world staring down at him, and the might of the United States military. He's staring down the barrel of a huge shotgun right now. And I think he's probably terribly more afraid than anything. And I think there's more rhetoric to try to scare people than anything. And I don't think that Donald Trump, Tillerson, or Mathias are playing games with him right now. And I really would like to see him just taken out. I think the whole world will rest a lot easier if Kim Jong-un is dead within the next few days.
Well, and I think that Tomahawk missile strike that Trump issued against Syria a few weeks ago shows he's perfectly willing to use military force against whatever country poses a threat.
Right, and of course, we dropped the Moab on Afghanistan after that, and I think Donald Trump has come in and I think he's done a great job. This is stuff that should have been done 8 years ago. We had an administration that just let the world go to hell in a handbasket while Barack Obama played golf and took vacations, and he let all the horrible enemies get a hold of horrible weapons. And did no negotiation, no diplomacy, nothing to stop it, as far as I know. And now look where we're at in the world stage. It's just a horrible condition.
Well, guess what, Dan? We now have someone in the chat room here, and I like this question. This is, of course, she's been on here before. You probably remember her, Becky Buchko, up there in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. She says, "Do you think people have a right to be mad about removing illegals who have broken the law?" What an interesting question.
Removing, and how's this? Please repeat that.
Okay. She says, "Do you think people have a right to be mad about removing illegal immigrants who have broken the law?"
Not at all. I mean, that's why they're called illegal immigrants, not legal immigrants. When you come into this country undocumented and unwilling to get your citizenship and your paperwork, and you're taking American jobs and American handouts and American welfare and using this country to your advantage without going through the steps. There's hundreds of millions of people throughout the history of America that have come here from other countries legally, and we have opened our arms completely to these people and welcomed them. And I'll give you a good example. I was sitting in a Social Security office a couple of years ago, and an Oriental gentleman had just gotten his American citizenship and his first Social Security number, and they announced it, and the whole office stood up and applauded. Now, why can't all these other people behave in the manner that this gentleman did? He came in this country, he took the steps to become an American citizen, he got a legitimate Social Security number, and he was welcomed with applause by people of every color, black, white, Hispanic, and a Social Security office here in St. Petersburg, Florida. Well, why can't these people that are pouring over the border, and mostly of them are coming through the Southwest area, why are they different? And that if we shut off, I really think we should shut off funding to the states and cities that are harboring these people. And I think that we should arrest officials, voted in officials like Governor Jerry Brown of California, and some of the mayors and governors of the states that are allowing this to happen in cities.
Those so-called sanctuary cities, yes.
Because what that to me is what Jerry Brown wants to do is aid and abet illegal immigration. When you set up a sanctuary city for illegal activity, then you're aiding and abetting illegal activity, and that is, and according to law, when you aid and abet an armed robbery or a break-in, or when you drive the getaway car for a robbery, you're just as guilty as the person that robbed the gas station or the 7-Eleven or whatever. And to me, if Jerry Brown wants to set up California as a sanctuary state for illegal immigrants, then he needs to go to prison as well. He needs to be handcuffed and dragged out of his office and taken into federal penitentiary. There's no doubt in my mind about that. He's aiding and abetting illegal activity. It's detrimental to the United States. And actually, he's violating the Homeland Security Act. He's circumventing the United States economy, and that is an act of terrorism by the laws that were put forth in the Homeland Security Act. So by aiding and abetting these people that are taking American jobs, taking American welfare, and American money, he's actually aiding and abetting terrorism as defined by the Homeland Security Act. So in my mind, Governor Jerry Brown is a terrorist at this point. And any mayor, governor, council person, or anybody that accepts illegal immigrants into their town or city and defends them and fights against the United States government from extracting them and exporting them is a terrorist in my mind. I mean, they're not just a criminal, they're a terrorist. They're terrorizing the United States and undermining the Constitution, undermining the economy of the United States. And you want to tell me that they can come into flea markets and bust people for selling bootleg shoes and handbags and perfume under the Homeland Security Act and calling them terrorists for circumventing the economy, then Jerry Brown is certainly guilty of the same thing in a much bigger, worse way. I don't think he should ever see light of day if he wants to continue to defy the United States. Just my opinion, but I think it's a correct opinion. If you're going to defy the United States laws and behaviors and economy, then you need to go just along with the criminals that you're aiding and abetting.
Agree with what you have said so far.
Yeah, and I think, Donald Trump has done a great job. He's signed a lot of executive orders that are campaign promises. He's had a lot of fights on his hands. He's had a lot of cabinet people that he's wanted, shot down, and he's had to fight for people. He's also put in some great people in place too, and he's installed some really strong individuals in our government, and and I think he's trying to make the world a safer place for everyone, not just United States citizens. And I think he wants to make America great again. I think he wants to bring jobs back. I think he wants to see people prosper. I honestly think this country's been very, very good to this man. He's had a life most people can't and won't ever be able to dream of, and he wants to give back. Who else? Why? He didn't need this job. I mean, a guy like that doesn't. He didn't need the headaches that go along with being a world leader. He's not just a leader in America at this point. He's becoming a world leader, and I think that countries like China and South Korea are now and Japan are now depending on his strength to turn the North Korean situation around. If you notice, they're not actually committing to anything other than, well, let's do something, but they're not saying what. And he's saying, hey, he's got a nuclear powered sub and a battleship over there, and he's installed the THAAD system, the anti-missile defense system in South Korea at America's expense right now. That's doing a lot in a short period of time, if you ask me. None of our allies have done anything other than talk. And he's held the door open.
Dan, I'd like to take just a moment to welcome back my friend Debbie in Northeast Texas. Debbie, you're absolutely right. The storm knocked me out. I've had to switch phones. I told Dan we're going to cut the show short in about 10, 15 minutes, and we're covering what Trump has done during the past 100 days.
Yeah, and I think he's done a great job. I understand that he gets up and goes to work. The first 100 days, there hasn't been a day where, I know he's traveling between Florida and the White House, and some people are making a big stink about that, but give the guy a break. He's got a family, like anybody else. He's got other interests. He's given up most of his business interests in order to run this country. And I think he works every day.
His daughter has really, really stepped up to the plate, too. I've seen her. There was a really good interview. I think it was either Charlie Rose or Gail King. Somebody recently interviewed her, and she's doing a fantastic job in holding everything together, while her dad's occupied with being president.
You're talking about it. Ivanka, is that how you say her name? Yeah, and she's given up her business.
Yes.
In order to become an advisor to the White House. And she's a relatively young woman, just 5 years old, yeah. And I think the whole Trump family are very grateful what you call grateful Americans, which is a very distinct difference from what we had before. Barack Obama was an American hater. He hated the American way of life. He hated the Christian way of life. He's a Muslim under disguise, and he was a traitor and a treasonous bastard. And Donald Trump and his family realize that God has blessed them with an incredibly beautiful, wonderful life, and they want to give back through public service. And it has been a difficult transition for all of them. And they, like I said earlier, they didn't need this headache. And now he's finding himself on the world stage in a very serious crisis. What can you say about
Dan? I think the biggest mistake that North Korean dictator could make right now would be to dare to attack one of our battleships or to attack an American city. I believe we would obliterate North Korea off the map.
I think it's what has to be done if he does that. And I think he's like a schoolyard punk bully. He's a lot of hot wind, but when it comes really down to the fist fight, he'd probably be, after the first smack in the face, he'd be the first one to turn and run. And I don't think there's a lot of substance to him. He wants to be the big, strong man, but he's not there yet. And the rest of the world is correct. They can't afford to let him become that person. And that is where we're at right now. We can't afford to let him become a major nuclear superpower like Russia or the United States. We can't give him that capability. It has to be taken away from him before he does some serious damage to the world population. And it's the bottom line. I think Donald Trump sees that, understands that, and he's going to do his best to make sure that doesn't happen, and that the world is a safer, better place for everyone, not just America, but for all of our allies, Japan, South Korea, even China, and in a lot of regards, Russia. who's come out and said that military action would be unacceptable in the United States. But they're, like I said before, they haven't exactly said what they would do, you know. And I think because they're saying that because they're not going to threaten us, they understand the severity of the situation as well.
You know, Dan, I'd like to weigh in for just a moment, too, on a previous guest, several months back, maybe even a year. In fact, he's been on the show a couple of times. You may have heard of a couple. Lawrence Vernadeau. He is a world traveler and author, and he has gone to something like 150 different countries. Apparently, he's independently wealthy enough that he can do that, and that's great. And he's writing books. He's remember the names of them right now off the top of my head, but you can do a search on Amazon for him, Lawrence Vernadeau. Well, anyway, North Korea does allow a token number of people to come and visit. Of course, the entire visit is totally orchestrated by them. You are shown what they want you to see. You cannot just freely roam around and see what they don't want you to see, which is the starving population over there, that literally the common average people are starving to death. You're taken through these elaborate grocery stores that are beautifully stocked, but that stuff is only available to the upper echelon ruling class and the elite. Common people never get to touch that stuff. Propaganda films are shown even to the visitors, even to an American like Lawrence Vernadeau. Propaganda films are shown about how terribly evil the United States is and how we attacked North Korea and how what a dreadful opponent and enemy we are, and how North Korea has got to defend itself against the dreadful, evil United States. And this whole campaign of brainwashing that they do on their own people, they try to do that with world visitors that come through as token visitors. Of course, nobody's buying it. And Lawrence Vernadeau was just appalled and stunned that they would even try that. And it's worth listening to my show that had him as a guest. He's on 2 or 3 different shows. But this particular one, he spends about 30 minutes talking about North Korea and how they put this image forth, or try to guests who visit their country, and it's just total bullshit, total facade. And Lawrence Vernadeau is the man's name, and he's been there firsthand, and it's bad, really, really bad.
It's interesting you bring that up because today, preparing for tonight's show, I read that they've actually set up a city near the border of South Korea. They call Peacetown, I think it's translated from their language. That's a ruse. That it has, like an upper middle class type of architecture and lifestyle, but it isn't what the rest of North Korea is like. And it's a propaganda city. And who do we know set something like that up in the past, in the 20th century? Adolf Hitler set up concentration camps certain concentration camps to look like they weren't that bad to the Red Cross and other entities across the world until the end of World War II. We actually found out the horrors that took place. So it seems like dictators tend to do these kind of things for propaganda purposes. They want to they think they're fooling the rest of the world with their peacetown cities and this kind of thing. And you're right, I don't doubt anything that the guy said, that they want to give an impression that it's like, I guess, leave it to Beaver over there, but it's not. The people are extremely oppressed, up to the point where you can't even have a certain haircut.
Yes.
But you know that? I mean, there are only 3 official haircuts.
So I'm extremely disappointed in him personally.
Why are you disappointed, Henry?
Well, he bombed a country that haven't done anything to us, and
Let me out, Lee.
like he's the sheriff of the world. You know what I mean? Bombed Syria on a fake false flag chemical attack. And everybody knows that Assad, that would be the last thing Assad would do when he's winning the war. The last thing he would do would be to use chemical weapons. And had he used chemical weapons, he could have sure as hell killed a lot more people in, 76?
So who committed the crime in Syria then?
We don't know. There hadn't been an investigation. That's the whole point. Trump bombed the place without an investigation. He just assumed that Bashar al-Assad gassed his his own people. Why would he do that? What's the motive? What would be the motive? What would he gain by doing that? Nothing. He would just bring down the world around his ears, which is what happened. And
do you believe that Syria is a hotbed for terrorism?
Yeah, mostly because we're sponsoring them, trying to get rid of an elected president in Syria.
So you think the motive was to get rid of Assad all along?
Oh yeah, I think the CIA. Paid protesters originally when they originally started protesting. I think the CIA was in there with their GMOs and with their GMOs stirring up trouble. See, they need to get rid of Saddam. They need to get rid of. They need to get rid of Bashar al-Assad for several reasons. They've got oil. They dumped the U.S. dollar. They're anti-Israel, and they're really standing in the way of Israel's Greater Israel project. And so they need to get rid of it, and they need that land.
Who's they? Who needs the land? I'm
Israel.
Confused now.
Jews. Jews. God allegedly gave that land to Jews all the way from the Nile to the Euphrates. Not just Israel proper as we know it today.
Right.
But, biblically, they claim that God gave them that land all the way from the Euphrates River to the Nile River. And they call it the Greater Israel Project. And they're steadily working on it every day.
So you believe that Trump is in on a conspiracy with Israel to retake the Syrian land and give it back to Jews in Israel?
No conspiracy. It's right out on the table. It's right out in the open. Trump is backs the Jews all the way.
Well, I realize he's very much of an advocate and an ally of Israel and the Jewish people. I believe he has one in his family. Right. I don't know if he would go to the extreme of 59 missiles. Tomahawks were shot over in Syria. It's pretty extreme, but if you're saying that the motive was to unseat Assad as president and take the land, isn't there a terrorist-sponsored civil war going on in Syria right now? If I'm not mistaken. Why do the United States? Why do they want to take in refugees from Syria, Muslim? Why is that become a big issue during the election and now? Who are they fleeing, and why?
They're fleeing war.
They're fleeing war. So who's the other side of the conflict?
Arab terrorists, Arab fundamentalists, and they're funded by Saudi Arabia, the United States, the CIA.
You're right.
Britain.
There are times when
they're enemies of Israel. That's true.
Right.
But Assad is a greater enemy to Israel because he is the president of the country.
Rolled over onto its back for the 11-minute ride into orbit. Discovery now making one last reach for the stars.
What do you think?
I think there's just another huge mess in the Middle East that needs to be cleaned up one way or another. There's too many. One point you made is there's too many people running around with weapons in a country that I don't know, and they're killing people left and right, and I'm hearing one that Muslim interest, Islamic interest are persecuting Christians. Christians are fleeing the country. Then I hear that Muslims are fleeing the country as well. It sounds like a very confusing situation. The Middle East has been a confusing situation since I've been born, since 1960, probably before then.
Well, I agree, but that. There's the fanatics moderates.
Great.
So all Muslims are not the same.
I disagree with you. Yeah, I taught at an international university, and I had a group of Moroccans that were in one of my courses, and most of them were Islamic. And they were trying to explain Mecca to me and how important that is to them in their religion. And they seemed like peaceful enough people, non-fanatical, more interested in commerce, world commerce, than they were. Most of them were from wealthy families and were being set up groomed to do business in the United States and in Morocco and Spain, of all places. But they have Moroccans have a big interest in Spain. And so
the average religious person is not a fanatic.
Right.
It's the ones on the fringe that are cutting off people's heads and that type of stuff.
They seem to get the most press, though, don't they?
Well, absolutely. That's what the press is there for, sensationalism. You know that.
Right. And, I believe that has to stop at all costs. I think that if we have to throw Tomahawk missiles or Moabs in Afghanistan to stop the fanatical fringe, then that's what has to be done. I think the world needs to be made a safer, peaceful place for everyone, not just the United States, not just for Israel, not just for Syrians, not just for Islamics.
You can't spread peace with a pistol. You have to get out. We have to get out of the Middle East and leave those people alone. That's what's creating. ISIS was created after we invaded Iraq for no reason at all, none. We created.
I honestly have to disagree with that, sir. We proved in Japan in 1945 that you most certainly can spread peace with an atomic bomb. And that was the only thing that stopped the Japanese in World War II. And there are some religions, some cultures, and some ethnicities that don't understand peace unless it's shown to them through force. And the Japanese are an extremely fantastic example.
You're talking about occupation. Certainly.
No, I'm talking about that we had to stop them, and the only way we could was through atomic weaponry.
They were stopped. Japan is an island. Their Navy was destroyed. The Air Force was destroyed. There was nothing they could do. They was prostrate. They were stopped. Japan was making overtures for peace weeks before we dropped the atomic bomb. I've heard from some sources the reason we dropped the atomic bomb on Japan was simply to impress upon Russia not to try to grab territory because we had the most powerful weapons, which had nothing to do with those innocent Japanese that were bombed, they were incinerated over there.
I don't know, all my life.
People all over the world that's got a brain know that the United States is the tyrant of the world. We're warmongers. We have been at war since 1776. We've been at war every year since the founding of this nation, except for 17 years. We had 17 years of peace. All the other years, we've been at war. And intelligent people all over the world know that.
I don't know. I feel like all the wars, the war in 1776 was extremely justified. The war in 1812 was extremely justified. The entry of America into World War I and World War II were justified. I'm a little dicey on the Korean War. I don't really know the history of that. In the Vietnam War.
Can disagree. Intelligent people can disagree.
Yeah. I mean, the fact is that people look to the United States because of their might and their power and their weaponry and their military might for existence when they're being bullied by other countries and other
Let me ask you this. The Soviet Union is long gone. It's been gone, for years.
Right, exactly. Since the early 90s. That's correct.
Over there now, they've got a Russian Federation, which they have, people vote, and they have, it's kind of like the United States. They have states are united,
twist back with a 10-minute ride into orbit.
and the states
Discovery
are
now making
federated
one last reach
in the
for
Russian
the stars.
Federation, so it's kind of like the same. And they're a superpower also. What do you think would happen? First of all, you are aware that we have Russia surrounded with NATO bases. You're aware of that, right?
Well, they tried to
Well, I'm sure they feel the same way. When we're on their doorstep with nuclear missiles, I'm sure they feel the same way.
And it didn't work out for them before, and I don't think it'll ever work out for them. And, of course, they have long range.
For them, what do you mean for them? They're not the aggressors in the world. They don't have military bases all over in Canada and Mexico, and Cuba.
I don't know. I mean, you tell that to some of the students, the blind student from Bosnia that came into my class, or the boy that's family was from the former Republic of Georgia that heard his neighborhood was being bombed by Russian interests.
Anecdotes. Anecdotes.
Huh?
Anecdotes. They don't stop the fact that. Yeah, anybody can come up with anecdotes, but they don't stop the fact that our bases have Russia surrounded.
Well, they should. They need to be contained. I think a country that large with the kind of super military they have needs to be contained. At least they unleash themselves on Europe.
And what about the United States? They don't need to be contained. They should police the world.
No, I believe it's a Christian nation that does things for the best for the rest of the world. I honestly do. I mean, it's run by a Christian man now. We've gotten rid of the Muslim traitor. And we've got a God-fearing Christian man that's trying to do the best he can for the rest of the globe. And sometimes a lot of people they're hard heads. And just like the neighbor.
Back with a 10-minute ride into orbit. Discovery now making one last reach for the stars.
Me? Well, everybody's entitled to their opinion.
You sound like a nut. I'm glad you don't have your finger on the nuclear button. I'll tell you for sure.
I don't know. I'm a big fan of Donald Trump, and he does.
I suppose you
He's got to use it. He's got to use it.
I suppose you think it's okay that Israel kills little children for sport.
I hear this about everybody. I hear this about the Palestinians. I hear this about the Islamics. I hear about the atrocious things about all these countries. Is it propaganda? Have I ever witnessed it? No, I don't know that. I don't think the Jewish people kill children for sport.
But you do think Assad killed his own people.
I know that there was.
You didn't witness it, but you still think he did it, right?
I think there was a chemical attack of some sort, and the United States responded. Who's responsible ultimately for it?
Well, tell me this.
I couldn't tell you like that.
What about motive? Why would he do that? You think he's an idiot?
I don't know why. The people in the Middle East defy my intelligence for what the reasons why they do things that they do.
Yeah, they're different. They're different. They're idiots.
I think that most of them are. I really do. I think they're crazy. I think most of them are nuts.
Well,
I think most of them are religious nuts.
That's just what I think about you.
I'm sorry you feel that way, but I mean, I'm a Christian, I've studied the founding of the United States. The United States was given to man by God, and is why it's the greatest nation on earth. And if you think that's crazy, God bless you. You know, if you don't believe in God, and don't believe it's a God's country, Christian-centered country.
This nation was founded. It was founded by a bunch of rich, liberal, slave-holding rebels, terrorists.
I just simply don't believe that. I believe it was founded.
Every one of them. I've done the research. Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, all of them. They were born rich. They were raised in the lap of luxury. They owned slaves, and they talk about this stuff. All men are created equal. All men are created equal. My ass, ain't nobody created equal. If God created all men equal, why do we need laws to make them so?
You know, there's some things that people just can't answer about the world and what God's motive or plans for. But I do know that, like, my family background goes all the way to the Dews, who came here to colonize the Tidewater area, Virginia, North Carolina, for tobacco farming and make money. And yeah, they were wealthy. Thomas Dew was a wealthy man. But that's the nature of a capitalistic society, my friend.
So you're a descendant of Jew? You're a Jew?
No. Oh, no, absolutely not. I'm a Christian.
I thought you said...
Dew, Thomas Dew, D-E-W,
okay.
is in my bloodline. And his family came here to colonize America for profit, for tobacco profit. And America became a capitalistic society, and that's what you get with a capitalistic society. Capitalistic societies are run on money in the capitalistic system. And I don't think there's a better system on earth myself. I haven't seen one. No country has greater wealth and health care and everything that we've got. I think we're the greatest country on earth.
I prefer a capitalistic society myself. But you can't have pure capitalism. There's no such thing as pure capitalism, because there's a socialist inside of everybody. I mean, most women are socialists to begin with, and the synthesis, how do you say that word, between capitalism and socialism, if it's done properly, everything works out well.